This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
It is now time for our weekly segment with Todd Lutsky from Cushing Dolan. So please give us a call on our studio line to have any of your estate planning questions answered free of charge by our attorney here, Todd Lutsky. That number again to call us is 888-205-2263. Again, 888-205-2263 to have any of your estate planning questions answered by the wonderful Todd Lutsky. And I will ask Todd Lutsky the first question. How are we doing today, Todd?
I'm never better. And you?
I'm doing fantastic. I feel the summer. Actually, today is the first day of summer, correct? The 21st?
It is?
Correct. It is here, and I'm ready for it. I'm all here for it. Todd, one of the questions that I'll often get asked, trusts to a lot of clients can be quite intimidating. What are some of the general purposes or uses of, say, a revocable trust that you could just simplify for the listeners out there just to know getting into the process of looking into creating a revocable trust for a estate plan?
Well, let's do this. So I'm going to talk about it from a revocable trust standpoint and then compare it to an irrevocable trust standpoint, right? Because a lot of the reasons we do estate planning in general is, and everybody knows this one, we want to avoid probate, right? Mm-hmm. That's an easy
Huge
one.
Pain.
And simply, there are other ways to do it, but simply owning assets in a trust is going to avoid the probate process. That's first and foremost. And now to make the comparison, a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, either one owning the assets will avoid the probate process. So again, similarities versus differences in this case.
Sure.
And again, one of the other ones that most people think about when they do estate planning is taxes. You know, we don't want to pay any estate taxes when we die. We don't want to give it to the state, Massachusetts, or your state. Please look, they vary from state to state. And we would like to also avoid the federal death tax if we can. And these trusts are designed to do that through the use of marital shares and remainder shares, which we've talked about in the past. And they are designed to shelter assets on the first death of a spouse, leaving the assets not included in the surviving spouse's estate, thereby sheltering assets when one spouse dies. Now, that said, that marital share and remainder share that only exist when one spouse dies is the same, well, very similar, in the irrevocable or the irrevocable trust. I'm sorry, irrevocable or revocable trust. Either way, you can do estate tax planning. From an income tax perspective, the revocable trust doesn't file a tax return. Everything is in your own personal estate, your own personal 1040. The irrevocable trust, at least this one that we're talking about, does require the filing of an income tax return if it generates income. Sometimes you don't put assets in that generate income.
Could just be your house, right?
Or vacation home or something, correct. So there would be no income tax return. But if it's generating income, whether it's rental property or interest and dividends from an investment portfolio, then yes, the irrevocable trust does have to file an income tax return. And everybody fears that you're going to pay taxes at a higher rate because it's at the trust level. But these trusts are designed as grantor trusts, so that's the buzzword. And so they don't pay any income taxes. It all gets reported, it flows through, if you will, even if you don't take it out, onto the donor's personal income tax return. So again, another similarity. They can do estate tax planning, probate planning, and really no adverse income tax issues for these trusts while they're living, okay? And I'll leave you with this one last thought, that even at death, you can put the same language in as to how you leave assets to your family when you're gone. So really a lot of similarities. And when we continue, we can talk more about differences, etc.
A lot of important points there. We're talking with Todd Lutsky here. If you have a question for him, anything in the estate planning realm, you can give us a call right now at 888-205-2263. Again, that number is 888-205-2263 to have any estate planning question that you may have answered by attorney Todd Lutsky here from Cushing Dolan. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, your questions for Todd Lutsky right after this break.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
We are back here with Todd Lutsky. If you want to give us a call to ask any of your estate planning questions to Todd Lutsky, you can reach us at 888-205-2263. Again, that number to ask Todd Lutsky any question you have, 888-205-2263. We're going to head out to our first caller, Steve in Chelmsford. You're on with Todd Lutsky.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me. Todd, I have a very beginner-type novice question for you.
Oh, good. Sounds like one I might be able to handle.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, my wife and I, we're in our early 60s. I'm 61. We own our house. It's paid for. We're thinking about doing an irrevocable trust.
What age did you say you were?
I'm 61. My wife is 60.
Got it. Go ahead.
No, I'm just curious about bank accounts, money markets, and CDs and so forth. If they're included under the umbrella of the trust, are you still able to make withdrawals, go on vacation, buy cars, maintenance to the house, and so on?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So one, certainly you're going to put the house in. That's a given. If we're going to do irrevocable trust, assuming that's the way you want to go, I would put the house in. I would put a vacation home in. None of those issues. But you're saying, Todd, what about money? So do we put money in these irrevocable trusts, whether they're bank accounts, investment accounts, or just CDs, etc.? The answer is yes, we put them in. Then we think about how much to put in and how much to leave out. So in this case, I would say all your IRA money, let's not forget that. So if you have IRA type money, retirement qualified money, none of that is ever going into the trust. In fact, it won't go in either trust while you're living, revocable or irrevocable. So my first idea is live off that, use that when you need extra money. Leaving that for the kids, one, under the Secure Act, makes it potentially taxable at a higher rate than you because it's got to come out over 10 years, and then that could push them into a higher bracket since they're already earning money. So, that's not good. Two, if you're doing an irrevocable trust, then it is at risk for the nursing home anyway because it's not in there. So two good reasons to spend that money first. We also leave your money, a small bank account, however much you want to leave in your cash account, outside of the trust to receive direct deposit, Social Security, pension checks, etc. And of course, that's money you will spend first as well. So that sort of takes a little burden off. Then the money that you do put in the trust, whether it's investment accounts or bank accounts, it's going to be generating interest, dividends, etc. Income. Well, you get all that income, comes directly out. It's just the principal that can't be used directly for you because it's protected from the nursing home. However, if the house is in there, you could certainly use the money to put a new roof on. You could use the money to put a new bathroom in, fix it up. All of that's perfectly available to use. And there are indirect ways in which money can come out to you. But so that's sort of the balance you got to strike in terms of how to use that money. Oh, and by the way, that money can also be used to buy another house if you sold one or bought another house. So I think you'd be pleasantly surprised to find out, and of course we don't have the time on the radio to get into it, but I think you'd be pleasantly surprised, Steve, to find out the amount of control you have over the assets in these irrevocable trusts and the ability to use what's in there while balancing your wish to protect these assets from the cost of long-term care. So I hope that helps a little bit. And folks, for all of you, this is actually a perfect caller question because the guide we're giving away this month is called The Differences Between Revocable and Irrevocable Trusts, and it literally explains a lot of what I just said. all the differences, all the similarities. I think you're going to find there are way more similarities than differences, and that's a pleasant surprise. So if you've never done your planning, get the guide, learn which way is right for you. If you've done your planning, get the guide and see if maybe changing from one to the other might be time for you, depending on how long ago you did your plan. 866-848-5699 is the number, or legalexchangeshow.com. You can download it right there. Again, differences between revocable and irrevocable trusts, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com.
We're going to jump to our second caller here. Mark in Northborough, you're on with Todd Lutsky.
Hi. I got off the phone actually with your office a little while ago. I'm trying to figure out what I need to do. My parents are up there. My father's in his 90s. They don't share a lot of information with me. And they're not really good at making good decisions. And I think he may have a will at best.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to figure out what they've done and what I need to do to get him to actually, come in and meet with you guys, or just figure out what they've done and what I need to try to correct if they're going to do anything. Like I said, they're not.
Let me ask you this: they're still both living, and would you say they have assets like a house or money and stuff?
I think all in everything they own is maybe $500,000 or $600,000. So
including the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd like to not hand that all over to potentially a nursing home someday. I don't think people generally work their whole lives to end up in that position. And I don't think he's going to be real big on coming to the realization that he's made another mistake, but I need to do something.
Right. So I think if you want, you can take back to him at least some information like, first of all, before we do anything, he has to, or they have to be the ones that want to do this. I know you want to do it, but I'd be representing them if you're coming to my office, or any attorney would be representing them, not you. So we want to make sure that they're interested in doing it. So they would need to come to the meeting and, meet the lawyer and go through that whole process. Now, that said, you can at least go back to them and say, based on the size of their estate, you can keep it pretty simple. And it doesn't mean you don't protect it. It's still worth protecting. I'm guessing that the lion's share of their assets is probably the house, right? And so at a bare minimum, you put the house into one of these irrevocable trusts. And the good news with them is the size of their estate, even though they're a married couple, they could get away with doing just one trust, a joint irrevocable trust. They're not going to need two trusts because there's no estate tax concerns here for them. It's simply avoid probate, keep them in control. Again, we don't want them to feel like they're giving up control, especially at this age. They need to say, I want to keep control. That's what they really want. And we will begin the process of protecting the assets from the cost of long-term care, and it will provide a bloodline plan to the family the way they want. So good news on that front, no estate tax concerns for them either way. But I would put the house into the irrevocable trust, and then you got to run some numbers over how much money they need to live on day to day to decide how much of the money that they have that we would want to put in the trust. Just like Steve, we were explaining to Steve a minute ago as to how the money in the trust works and how you can keep control over that and still, live on at least the income that's being generated from that money and continue to manage the investment. So a lot to talk about. At least go back to your folks, give them some of that information, assure them they'll stay in control, and I hope that helps a little.
Great questions that we had from our callers today. Todd Lutsky from Cushing Dolan, thank you so much for your time this week, Todd. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com.